Well, I am very scared about how things will go in November, not just for America's sake and Canada because we're your next door neighbor and closest friend, but everywhere around the world, from China to the Middle East to Iran to North Korea to India, the entire world. There's so many evil forces rooting against Trump, but I'm sure more. I mean, we had the whole Russian misdirection for 3 years about Russian influence. I think there really is some influence in the United States. I think China would like nothing more than to get rid of Trump. He's the first president to ever stand up to them. I am very afraid as a foreigner for what will happen. I think Donald Trump's reelection is actually more important to Canadians than whether or not Trudeau is reelected. I know that sounds in some way self-abnegating or something, but no, I think Trump's reelection is economically and in terms of peace and civilization actually more important than Canada's own election for Canada. Last word to you, Joel.
Well, we are staring down the barrel of a red November, and I don't see how we recover from that politically if Trump loses, because Democrats have made it clear. I mentioned the Tim Scott bill. They're not interested in solving the problem they've identified with policing. They just want the issue. So that tells me they want to keep fomenting this sort of unrest. Then they started defunding the police in various cities. They've abandoned policing in the Oakland School District. They're disbanding the police in Minneapolis. They are cutting $1 billion from the New York City police budget, and even that's not enough for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So they're going to dismantle institutions of law and order. And finally, they are going to permanently alter the rules of the game. The proposal to make Washington, D.C. at least partially a state, to make a 51st state, was passed by the House of Representatives last week. They know it's not going to pass the Senate under Republican control, but if Democrats win the White House and the Senate, as well as the House, they will pass D.C. statehood. They will create a 51st state, which they can do under the Constitution, and that will mean permanent additional 2 senators from the Democratic Party, because D.C. is so heavily Democratic. They will elect 2 senators from this tiny, tiny state, who would be smaller than most American cities, and they will have 2 senators from this little place that will create an almost permanent majority for Democrats in the Senate. So what they're going to do is a complete socialist revolution. Before I thought maybe it was a little whimsical to suggest that. Now I believe it's 100% true. They're going to create a new Democrat-held Senate. They're going to knock away the filibuster, so get rid of minority protections in the Senate, and they're just going to pass whatever they want. It's going to be Green New Deal, amnesty for illegal immigrants, you name it. This is going to be a socialist revolution. They'll rewrite the histories afterwards so that those of us who remember things a little differently will be called racist. We won't be published. We won't be heard. And they will tell themselves, the country and the world, that this was the second American Revolution, that this was the socialist revolution to correct all of the flaws in the original model. That's what they can taste already. That's what they feel is happening. The Democrats want a second American Revolution. And on current trends, they're going to get it. Unless there's a silent majority out there that stands up, that connects to one another, despite the attempts to shut down social media, to shut down the Reddit pages, to kick people off Twitter, to ghettoize people in conservative-only media spaces. If people can overcome that, and people can still go into the voting booth or vote by mail, if they have the courage to do it without fearing that their vote's not going to be counted because of all the schemes the Democrats have cooked up for coronavirus, then Trump can be reelected. He will probably be reelected again as a minority president, in the sense that he won't win the popular vote. He'll have to win the Electoral College. But right now, the pressure on him and his supporters is so relentless that this feels like a bitter and difficult struggle. And you asked me about the president's tweet, the lone warrior. He's not alone. There are a lot of people fighting with him. But the feeling of being under siege is palpable. And we are living through a time of terror that will only get worse. The violence may stop, the riots may stop, the protests may stop, but the fear will continue if Democrats win. I do think this is a world historical moment, that the success or failure of our democracy depends on this election. And I didn't think that you could get more consequential than 2016, but I do think this is a test of whether we can keep this republic. Nancy Pelosi likes quoting Benjamin Franklin, a republic if you can keep it. She's busy destroying it. And that quote is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. Essentially, we're in a situation where the country is going to sink if Democrats win. They've made their intentions absolutely clear. We're facing a second American Revolution, and it's something that worries us constantly now on the right. And a lot of the anxiety you see comes from a productive place. People are anxious about finding solutions for this. There's still time to turn it around. But the degree of isolation I think that individuals feel right now comes out of a sense of being unable to communicate with one another through the media, through social media. The search engines have changed. Google and others are quashing traffic. So we are engaged in a war where almost all of the weapons are on the other side, and all we have are principles and reason.
Well, that is the most terrifying thing I think I've heard this year. And I can't disagree with a word of it. By the way, Joel's new book is called Red November. Will the country vote red for Trump or red for socialism? And we'll put a link to the Amazon page where you can buy that book if you want to be terrified as I am right now. Joel, great to see you. Thanks for your sobering words. Boy, I think you're right about that. Red November. Go ahead and get it on Amazon in the link below. Thanks, Joel. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
All right. Stay with us. More ahead. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.